May the words that I speak and the thoughts and wonderings of all of our hearts draw us closer to God, who is our rock and our Redeemer. As we're coming into the Advent season, we decided it would be best to film from inside the sanctuary so that you can see that we indeed do have our Christmas tree and our beautiful antipendium. And that indeed we are getting ready for Advent, even though it doesn't quite feel like it. We're getting ready for Christmas. We're anticipating the coming of the Christ child. I pulled up one of my usual resources to get ready for Advent. And this was written before the pandemic. And I read this and I laughed a kind of laugh that doesn't have any humor in it. What would it mean to reshape and reclaim the Advent season from the current commercialized chaos it has become? Why did I respond in that way? Well, because suddenly the whole commercialization has been stripped down and sort of taken away. And as much as it's something that in some ways we talk about hoping for and looking forward to, when we're actually in the middle of it, it feels quite strange. We can only buy essential things in the stores. Even conservative politicians are telling us not to go Black Friday shopping. Things have been twisted on their side, and Christmas is not going to look like it usually does. So neither will Advent. Nevertheless, we are gathered here virtually, getting ready and preparing for Christmas. Preparing our hearts to make of our home and our heart a manger. And what it looks like for each of us is going to be different. Some of us will go more all out than ever decorating for Christmas just because we want to do something. And some of us, it will be too heartbreaking to do that. And we'll have a much pared down even in our decorations. But as we sing in our hymns today, we make our hearts and our homes fair, make them ready. And what are we preparing for in Christmas when it's something that is so different? What is at its heart at Christmas and in Advent remains the same. We are preparing for the coming of the Christ child to be born in each and every one of us. And this is the first Sunday of Advent. It's the Sunday of hope. Now, almost every year for Advent 1, I can't help but talk about December 1st is World AIDS Day, and this is from a campaign about 15 years ago, the Beads of Hope campaign, that was raising money to help around the world where AIDS is continuing to be a widespread, community-destroying pandemic. It is still a much bigger pandemic than the current COVID-19 one. Nevertheless, there is hope. And the hope that we talk about in relation to Advent, in relation to this time of year, is a hope that stands in the face of hopelessness. When there genuinely is no clear path out. So right now we know things are tough, but we also know that a vaccine is on the way. But we are facing this, how can we live when things are so different? At least some of us are. We're all facing this reality in our own ways. But what is hope when everything feels hopeless? What is hope when loved ones are hooked up to ventilators? What is hope when villages have lost the parenting age of people in Africa because of AIDS? What is hope when an entire generation of gay men was wiped out by a plague? What is hope? Hope is knowing that somehow God is here in the midst of this, in the midst of us, and that God will continue to be here, and that whatever else happens, God's love will always prevail. Oh, that you would rend the heavens and come down. That is the plea of Isaiah. His people see no hope. All hope has become hopelessness. And despair is everywhere. Oh, that you would rend the heavens and come down. Oh, that you would tear open the heavens and insert yourself into this situation in which we are finding ourselves. Because that is our desperate plea, that God would step into this situation, that God would arrive in the middle of this. And that's the thing. That's what happens. God shows up in the middle of everything going wrong. And it's not the way we thought it would be, and it's not what we had planned for, and it's certainly not the divine intervention that we had ordered. But God will come into our midst. It's the promise of Advent that a tiny baby, fully human, fully vulnerable, will be born directly under the heel of a terrible empire that is bent on destroying his people. A baby will be born. In the middle of the chaos and the brokenness, in the middle of trying to figure out how a Zoom Christmas can possibly help us through the long, dark days of winter, a child will be born unto us. A king given to us, and the government will be on his shoulders. All of this happens. Christ is born within each of us. In some ways, I'm reminded of the Whoville Christmas, in How the Grinch Stole Christmas. How even though they didn't have all their parcels and their packaging, Christmas still came. But of course, in that story, Christmas came because they all got together, stood in a circle, and sang at each other. Can Christmas come without that? Can Christmas come as we sing to each other over Zoom? Trying to sing together on Zoom does not work well, in case you've ever tried. You have to turn off so you can only hear one person singing when you do that, because they won't sync up together and it just doesn't work. But Christ comes into our midst anyway. Christ comes into our midst if we're eating a Swanson frozen turkey dinner. Christ comes into our midst if we are having all our Christmas phone calls, but none of our regular Christmas presents. Christ comes into our midst when we try to do our Christmas shopping, but all we can buy is chocolate. Maybe that's not a horrible thing. I don't know. Chocolate's pretty good. The point is that Christ comes into our midst and is born in the middle of all of this. And I finished the rest of my introductory paragraph that was supposed to help me get ready for this Sunday. As we enter this Advent season, let us remember the why. Let us reclaim the who. And let us reshape the how. Dismantling the current constructs that have shifted our focus from love entering the world. Thanks be to God. Amen.